Forgot to press record.
Okay, I pressed okay.
Okay, so Joe, continue. You mean, let me recap for anybody that's watching the replay. Sandra had a great topic that she brought up about the insula or the insular cortex, which is this like sixth lobe of the brain that is insulated by all the other lobes. So it's like right in the middle. It's kind of the bridge between the autonomic brainstem, midbrain, limbic system, our emotional and autonomic brain, and our cognitive brain. It really connects the two. And the insula itself is like a little microcosm of the entire brain.
And then it's got the in-depth pathways of the vision and the vestibular system.
Yeah, it's a big integration hub. And it's anyway, one of the things that it does is it takes all of the feelings that we have, the sensations from our body, and it attaches meaning to them. It's where feelings turn into emotions, which motivate behavior. So it's also where a lot of our interoceptive inputs are processed. So the feeling of what's going on inside our body. So one of the things that can happen with an insula that is dysregulated is that you can get on the empathy train and it just runs out of control. And it can go in either direction. Like you could meet somebody that has a really low functioning insula, they have low interoceptive awareness, they don't really feel what's going on within themselves, and they dissociate a lot and they have no empathy whatsoever. If they're aware of it and they manipulate people with that, that's called a sociopath. And there are those people out there. But most of the time, they're just not really aware of it. And they're just kind of like, huh, yeah, I see the puppy like being murdered, but I feel nothing. Or I see somebody crying and I'm just like, well, whatever. They'll get over it. I feel nothing for them. Um, so that's one end, but it can go the other way too. And that's what Sandra was kind of talking about. The topic she brought up was this idea that people that have like a hypersensitivity in their insula and they're overactive maybe, and they become very empathetic, so much so that it's almost detrimental. Because on the one hand, it could be considered like a really powerful skill if it's honed, right? The ability to read people and to feel what they're feeling, that can be really powerful in communication and prediction. But if you have no control over it and you just feel everything that everyone feels, that can be really draining and can be really tough. I can't tell you how many therapists I know that are overly empathetic and they get burnt out time and time again because they just get this like compassion fatigue and they feel everything that their clients feel and they can't separate work from home and they just like it's a mess. So, taking that a step further, Sandra has noticed in her own experience with clients and other people that are overly empathetic like this, that they have this kind of fluidity in their body and in their joints, especially like their lower back area and lots of rib flare and things like that. So that was the topic that she brought up. Did I hit all the main points? Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. It's really interesting. I've never actually seen that pattern myself. Um, but when I think back to a lot of the people that are very empathetic, they do have certain areas where they're just, yeah, fluid is a pretty good description. They don't tend to be like the really rigid, restricted. I mean, I bet if we did assessments, orthopedic assessments on them, on the joints going up the chain, you would find hypomobile joints.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes with hypermobility, It's a result of hypomobility somewhere else. Their hips are really tight, so their low back is just a noodle. That's pretty common. Their thoracic spine is just locked up, so their neck is just like bobbing on their head's just bobbing around. So it'd be interesting to tease that out. But anyway, Joe had a thought after that. So Joe.
Well, I've just in the flow state of things, I've noticed in the same characteristics of the individuals, it's like they seem to have a different gift where they're the people who are more into the psychic states, the mystical of, being tapped into energy. And then, and it kind of brings up the difference of, where does the neurology training end with kind of our nervous system being some sort of connection to our biofield, right? And what allows somebody's biofield to run wild versus somebody being able to be, my one friend Margaret calls it, rocked up in their biofield.
Rocked up.
Yeah, actually, Margaret's in the mentorship.
What? Which one?
M6.
Cool. Okay, so there's lots going on there. But the kind of the crux of it, I think, is, how do flow states connect to this insular cortex and empathy? Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah,
Among
yeah,
other things.
but well, on one of our previous calls, we discussed that there's the different flow states, where you have a flow state for performance, and we discussed spirituality as being one of those flow states.
Yeah. So you can have different levels, you might say, of flow. It's all the same state, but at varying degrees. Like I can have a micro flow state as I write an email, or as we all chat about fun stuff and we kind of get lost in it. But you can have a macro flow state when you are completely absorbed in something that is you are very skilled at, that has a certain element of risk or challenge, and um, that's a whole nother level. And it usually involves some kind of physical movement as well. Like you have to be deep embodiment is a hugely important characteristic for getting into macro flow states. That's why breath work is powerful for triggering flow states, and why chanting and singing in like religious ceremonies are really powerful for helping find these flow states. And so even within spiritual practices, there are different levels that you can reach. My mind went straight to like evangelical, like televangelists, I mean, the huge mega churches where people are like speaking in tongues and getting the touch of the Holy Spirit, and they're having seizures and whatever you believe is going on there. I'm not too convinced, but they could be triggering some kind of flow state in those people and in those ceremonies. That's totally achievable and realistic. And then people probably just let themselves totally go and they just go with it. And they see other people doing weird stuff, and so they just like take it up a notch. That's probably what's going on. I'm not really sure. Maybe they are being, taken over by the Holy Spirit or demons. Maybe I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't attended one. But a straight up, I know we talked a little bit about psychedelics too. They're kind of the shortcut way, and they're not really as um, beneficial for long-term. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know. The research just hasn't been done. But those intense, like life-changing, paradigm-shifting experiences, whether spiritual or psychedelical or however, breath work, however you find those are also flow states. The brain chemistry is not exactly the same, but it's very similar. You're just playing a little bit with the dials of the norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, anandamide, endorphins, all of these different brain chemicals. And they're just little dials that you're tweaking up and down. Um, and in that, basic low level flow state, you're getting a little dopamine, a little norepinephrine, rocking and rolling. And when you find flow, you get just a little bit of anandamide and endorphins, and that's what kind of like helps the body just totally relax, and time starts to dilate when you get those things added to it. But they're at low levels, right? And then when you finish, you get a little serotonin, you feel really good about yourself. Whoop-de-doo. The big ones are just like you just crank up those dials to 11. Specifically like the anandamide, the endorphins, those kind of things. And then your brain state, your brain wave states also change a little bit more. Like you might get deeper into a theta and might be more gamma as opposed to sitting right on that, alpha theta border. You know what I mean? So it's all the same, it's just varying degrees.
So this is tangential, but I've just never thought about it this way. So that's why so there's different entry points for different people, but depending upon their brain makeup too, right? So chanting is going to work for some people, breath work for other people, depending upon their own individual.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So we get to find what works for us, but generally it involves some sort of physicality.
Yeah. Yep. So there are something like 22 flow triggers that can help us find the state of flow. And there are big ones that are almost not always required, but they're like high payoffs. They're big opportunities. Clear goals is one, immediate feedback is another. The challenge skills ratio is another. Deep embodiment is another one. And they all work by either driving focus, and that's increasing norepinephrine and dopamine, or by lowering cognitive load, i.e., blocking distractions. So, but those are like the big four. Clear goals, you gotta know exactly what needs to get done. You need immediate feedback. You need to know immediately whether or not you're successful in your goal. Challenge skills balance, so it's got to be challenging just outside of your current skill level. And deep embodiment, so you have to be outside of your mind and in your body. So it doesn't require, I mean, life is movement, but it doesn't require a sport. We'll say that. It doesn't have to be like physical exercise per se. But oftentimes more movement is better. Even just a little bit. Like, sitting in church or in a ceremony of some kind. And just listening to someone speak and just by rote memorization, speaking back to them, that doesn't really do it for most people. But when you add rhythm and timing and chanting and these type of things, because of the way that the breath moves, because of the way that it activates your vagus nerve, because of all of these cool things, it shifts your brain out of like it shifts your brain out of like a cognitive beta brainwave state where it's like all like frontal lobe into more of a procedural kind of memory type more back of brain instinctual flowy type brain state, and it lowers the brainwave frequencies. Um,
You're saying that drives up focus?
the deep embodiment, not exactly. Most of I mean, it does indirectly.
Is the focus more an entry point?
The focus is what you have to maintain intense focus throughout the whole thing. But in the beginning, it's more important because that's the struggle phase, and that's where the distractions are most likely to take you out. Once you're in flow, like you get focus for free, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
have to, you have to create the container of the focus or whatever, and that's why people who have certain structures in their life, you enter in that way, or that's why ceremonies have certain structures, right? And you know what it's going to be, and then you
yeah,
enter it, and then you're
yeah,
still held by it, but you don't have to
yep,
create it anymore.
yeah. Set and setting. You have to have if you have that container, that's why it's so powerful, is because it helps you focus. Everything else is outside. There's no more like leave it at the door, they say. When you're here, right? And they're all techniques to help drive focus into the present moment and on the task at hand. So yes, like creating a temple for flow is what is often said in the flow
Hmm.
community. So, wherever you want to find flow, if it's at your desk when you work, then your office, everything should be geared towards that purpose. So there should be no distractions anywhere. I probably shouldn't have a guitar hanging on my wall right there. It could be distracting. I don't play that guitar very often though. Like acoustics out there. But if I had the acoustic guitar sitting right here, that would not be good because it's too easy to just pick up and play. Yeah. So your tempo for flow. The two things, drive focus and block out distractions. So removing all distractions and like just being relentless about it. Like clean desk, clean desktop on your computer. If you're going into, have we talked about like the um, surfing your biorhythms and the 90 minutes uninterrupted, like deep work that you should be doing at least once a day? Okay, so it's in the productivity workshop I think that I did, but um, you should be setting aside 90 to 120
Hmm.
minutes, ideally in the morning or whenever you work best, that you can dedicate to your highest leveraged activity. If you're
Oh
writing a
yeah, I
book,
remember you talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you write your book,
Yeah.
right? Um, and it's all about, ultradian rhythms and how our biology works and peak states and surfing those biorhythms. And the flow cycle fits really nicely in there. So, having that time set aside is part of this whole container. Okay. Like it's on your calendar, it's scheduled. You're setting yourself up for that. Like your desk is clean. There's nothing in the way. There are no distractions in the room. You're doing it at a time, ideally, called no time, or no non-time and no one, where no one's around and time does not exist. For, some of the most prolific authors I know, um, it's like 4 a.m. when there's no one around. There's no possibility of distraction because no one's awake. And there's no sounds outside. It's like dead time. So they call it non-time. And there's no one around. So that's great if you can do that. Otherwise, you pick your block of time, your container, and then you set up your temple for flow. So this container that I'm in right here, this room, no distractions. The container that is my computer. If I'm using my computer to write, I have my word processor open. If I need research, I already have it. And I have a list of clear goals of exactly what needs to get done. So that when I come to my temple, there is no way that I don't start and find momentum. And by doing that, I almost guarantee myself that I will find flow. Granted that I push through the struggle phase. But again, it's all about setting the container to number one, drive focus and maintain attention and block out all distractions. Now, how does this relate to your insular cortex? Great question, you may ask. Well, number one, if you have a dysregulated insular cortex and you have poor interoceptive awareness and accuracy, you don't feel what's going on in your body. You tend to dissociate. You don't have empathy. Your emotional regulation is garbage. Right? If you have some of these symptoms of a poorly regulated insular cortex, you're going to have a harder time, number one, even recognizing that you are in a flow state or have experienced one, because you just don't feel the differences, if that makes sense. You don't feel what it feels like to be in a regular state versus a flow state because you're just totally checked out. It's harder also to shift your state when you don't have a good connection to your body. The insular cortex, it really is like the connection between mind and body. It's the hub where it all connects. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to find flow if you don't have good input to that area and good awareness of your body. Not impossible, just harder. The empathy piece, the empathy piece plays more into group flow than it does to individual flow. So, like anybody that ever plays team sports, it's harder for you to connect to your teammates and to, like, on an unconscious level, instinctually be able to play off your teammates and find flow with the team if you have a poor functioning insular cortex. You kind of see how I got there, how that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can still find individual flow. Empathy is not as required for that. But once you start working with other people, like if you're a leader of a team, or you play on a team, like in an athletic endeavor, or you have run a business, and you have poor empathy, you're going to have a hard time connecting with people. So, training your insular cortex and training up the awareness and accuracy of your interoceptive system can be a really powerful tool to really make you a better leader, a better teammate, and help you find more flow individually and with your team. Joe, what's up?
But that's where a person understanding their neuro drills and their brain pattern and the 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 way that they need their system to work on that day, essentially, like if they were an athlete and they were going to be on a competition day, then that day is going to look a little bit different than if they were, just mom doing mom things every day. But that's essentially where you want to be able to train your system through all the systems in kind of the brain for that level of like boosting your nervous system regulation, like really on just all fronts and all levels of knowing yourself and your flow cycles of, what's a good environment versus, okay, are you noticing that this environment keeps disrupting you over and over again? Are you going to beat yourself over the head over and over and over again? Or, versus that's the safety, so you keep putting yourself in this environment, right? Like, I don't know. I guess that's where I'm feeling just in my own understanding of how all this stuff works. There's the level of performance, but then I got excited when you were like, oh, there's this brain state side of it. And then, there's the emotional part of being regulated or the emotional part of being off the chain or the emotional part of where we started with someone just kind of being dead, like just disconnected from that. But to me, it's like all the cranial nerves are stacked up on top of one another. So on some level throughout the day, every day, those nerves are getting a pattern of activation, and it may be serving you, it may be not serving you, but there's probably a level of knowing yourself better where you can serve yourself better.
True. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's like the foundational level, like the regulation and well, and just, first and foremost, the awareness is kind of what we've been talking about a little bit is the awareness of where you're even at, right, at this moment. Like the mom that's, doing her thing, but is just totally unaware that she's a total stress ball. And she's just going through her daily activities just a million miles a minute, and she's totally stressed out, but she just doesn't even realize it. She's snapping at people and she wonders why she hates her life and all this stuff. It's no different than the athlete getting ready for a game that's also just like unaware that they're not ready for competition. They're not warmed up. They're not at the level, and they're just like lackadaisical. And then they go out and they just get crushed for 2 quarters until finally it's halftime and they're warmed up and they're like, man, this game sucks. It's the same thing, different contexts, but it's the awareness first. Once they're aware, then they can change it, and then they can use the drills, to really help themselves. But part of that comes in that insular cortex area first, like being able to have a little bit of body awareness. Um,
And emotional awareness.
well, yeah, absolutely. I think those definitely, I think kind of go together. But you're right, yeah. Body awareness and emotional awareness. And also you know, the accuracy. Like you can be angry, um, but it doesn't have to like run your life, you know. You can use that anger. You can be angry and not like go punch people. You can be sad and still function.
Have
You can,
you seen, I wonder about situations where someone has, or maybe I'm answering my own question as I'm asking it, has so much awareness that it's detrimental, but maybe it's not that they have so much awareness that it's detrimental, it's that they don't know how to channel it.
yeah,
Well, they're not moving enough. In some level, like they're sitting still so much and they're overthinking things and they're like stuck in a place that they got to get up and move. Like,
sometimes, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
sometimes.
10,000 walks, get 10,000 steps a day, walk out the crazy.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody that's so I think Sandra is more talking about like interoceptive awareness
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that kind of like being hyper aware of everything that's going on inside your body, but not having much accuracy about what it actually means. Whereas I think, Joe, you're talking about like awareness of like heightened emotional states and then just like sitting with them and not doing anything about them and letting them fester and build. So kind of different. The first one, Sandra, is pretty common. Um, it's like the opposite of the disassociation um, um, person that just feels nothing and has no empathy and you know that type. The total opposite of that, which is also just as detrimental, is somebody that's hyper aware of everything going on in their body, but it's totally inaccurate. Like I got up from the chair and started walking, my heart rate elevated. I must be having a heart attack. I'm gonna die. Oh my God. And then that just creates anxiety and but it's like, no, 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 no. Your heart rate elevated so that you didn't pass out because you need blood to your brain when you stand up,
Yeah.
right? Or every gurgle I feel in my stomach after I eat something means I'm gonna like have a blowout in my diaper.
Well, I just want to show, I found that every so often I have someone like that in class over the years, and they're often very disruptive because
Oh,
they
in
ask
yoga, like
all
in
these
yoga
questions.
class,
Yeah, or, yeah.
100%. That's the worst place in the world for interoceptive hyper awareness and low accuracy. I feel this, and what about this? And I feel everything, and it's like good for you. Try to feel less, maybe. No, that's 100, like that. Been there, I've experienced that. And it is disruptive because they're asking about every little thing, and it's they really need some practice at the accuracy part of that equation.
And
Um,
I'll share, part of it I think comes from the culture of the way they think that that's more and more of that is a good thing. There's
yeah,
something that's fostered. Also, the notion of compassion. That's something that it's similar because it's related to Linsa, but that more and more and more compassion, and you're supposed to be more and more compassionate. But I've seen that happen where then you just become like accepting everything and having no boundaries because you're supposed to be. So
yeah,
they're connected too in there.
I agree. Yeah, just surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
reason yes, I still struggle with what I call what I do. There's many reasons for that, but
yeah, I get that. I get
yeah.
that for sure. Um, and you know, I come from the exact opposite world of feel nothing, pain is weakness, like just go crush people. But then I spent many years doing the opposite and like trying to feel things. And so I did a lot of yoga, I did a lot of spiritual practices and finding that balance is a really key thing. And what I find with those really, I'm gonna say woo-woo, but I don't mean it in a negative context.
I lived in Berkeley for a long time, so it's all good.
Good. So what I find with like the very woo-woo crowd is it's almost like a spiritual bypassing
Yeah.
type thing where they go so deep into the self-compassion and the empathy and the awareness, the self-awareness that it becomes a self-righteousness. And they bypass any sort of really hard physical work and things because they in a weird paradoxical way they start to feel too much, right? And then it's like nope, that's danger, right? And the example I'm thinking of in my mind is like this yogi that I trained when I was a personal trainer in a big gym, who clearly needed strength. She was just like a she was a noodle and she was very bendable, but she was always in pain because her joints were not stable. Like her shoulders would just like pop out and go right back in, but it was her joints were not in a good shape. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna build some strength. We're gonna make these joints stable. We're gonna make your core bulletproof. She's like, my core is very strong. And I said, okay, prove it. I had her do a Turkish get up without any weight, and she couldn't do it. And as soon as I put any kind of external loading, like just even a small dumbbell, she started to feel too much, and she thought her muscles were gonna like rip apart
Hmm.
because it was so heavy, and she was like having to um like it was a struggle for her. Like I was pushing her towards getting close to a limit that she had never pushed herself to before. She was used to pushing in a stretching sense, in a cardiovascular sense, to where she would get her breathing rate up a little bit, and in a endurance sense, like strength endurance, like she could hold a wall sit or a chair pose for a pretty good amount of time. And it's like that's good. It's a good way to build interoceptive awareness but it's not everything. And you need to experience what it feels like to actually lift something very heavy. Because I need you to also build the accuracy. And I don't know if I think we actually did talk about this last week on this call about the strength program that I built. Yeah, because Kathy was asking about the tempo and all that. And I explained to her how you can auto-regulate your own exercise and how it's a really powerful way to build the accuracy in your insular cortex of what this
Hmm.
interoception feeling is. And the way that you do it is you go to failure. You push yourself to absolute muscular failure in a safe way. That's the only way that I know to build the accuracy of, so then everything you do after that, if I say we use a rate of perceived exertion scale, so RPE. And if I say I want you at a 7 out of 10 RPE, how do you know what 7 is if you don't know what 10 is? And so all of my clients, just one time, that's all it takes. I will push them to absolute 10, to failure. And so the next time and every time after that, I can say, I want you to go to a 6. And they know what 6 feels like. I want you to go to an 8 this time. You're going to be working hard, but you're still going to have a little bit in the tank. You're not going to failure, just below it. Another term we often use is reps in reserve. So how many reps you got left in the tank, right? If I say 2 reps in reserve and we're doing 12 reps or something, like you should be able to get to 12 reps, but you can do 14. Or if 12 reps is the goal, but I say 2 reps in reserve, when you get to 10, if 12 is going to be your max and you're going to fail, you're stopping at 10. Do you see how that kind of works? They're both ways to auto-regulate and to use your powers of interoceptive awareness and accuracy to kind of dial in your own dosage, right? Because we're always talking about minimum effective dose. Well, the minimum effective dose for you to build strength and muscle is a certain amount of volume and intensity. But if you never take it all the way to failure, even just one time, then you'll never know, you will never be accurate. Because remember how the brain works, its only job is survival. And so it's going to always err on the side of comfort and safety. It doesn't want to go to failure. Definitely not. So you're always going to undershoot. You're always going to err on the side of doing less, of making it easier. It's just how we're wired. Conservation of energy. So, but if you can take it to failure one time, then you know objectively, okay, I know where it's at. I know what it feels like. So I know accurately how far I need to push myself. That's why air hunger drills are so powerful. That's why that makes you more accurate with your interoceptive awareness. Is because with air hunger, when you're holding it after an exhale, it's brutal. It's brutal, but you're showing yourself and you're showing your brain, like, look, we're safe, we're fine, we're not gonna die, right? So just chill out. So when I do my straw breathing after that, or when I just go back to regular breathing, like that air hunger feeling is no longer such a danger or threat. So that's how it helps train up the accuracy of your interoception so wonderfully. So
Have you had this conversation with Watus?
no, I haven't seen Watus in him forever.
He loves doing air hunger in the pool with some of his one-on-one clients.
That seems like the dumbest idea ever. I mean, as long as he's there with them,
Yeah, he's there with them. Yes.
that's a good way for people to have shallow water blackouts and die.
No, he's there with them.
Okay, good.
But isn't that good? Like you're doing air hunger and you're building it up underwater.
What do you need the water for?
I don't know. I guess increasing stress.
I mean, you get some extra pressure from the water, but
There's so many people who drown here that they don't make public about it. It does make me a little.
So do you guys know Wim Hof? Yeah, the Iceman. When his breathing method became really popular a few years ago, there was tons of stories about people dying because they would do they would do his Wim Hof method in the pool, and then they would hold their breath and see for how long they could swim. Like a lot of triathletes were using this as a training method. Free divers, that, but the risk of blacking out is like really high. And they would just like in shallow water, just would black out and just friend of mine actually died that way. Not
Oh,
great. So yeah, I don't do that anywhere near water. If you have a coach like one-on-one and he's watching you, okay, that's fine. But I don't know, I'd have to ask Wadis what he thinks the benefits of doing it in water are, unless you're actually training for breath holds underwater and you're like swimming or I
I
don't
don't know
know.
what his clients' goals are
Yeah.
either one. Um, I know I remember him having positive outcomes, like watching his clients progress and however he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the whole water thing is. The triathletes and the swimmers were training in the water, and I still don't even know why they were doing it in water. Like you can do the breath holds on land and train up your lung capacity and your CO2 tolerance on land, and then that will help you in the water. I don't know why they were doing it in water, but I haven't trained anybody that's a free diver or triathlete that wants to do that. So to each their own. As long as he's safe about it, whatever.
No, I'm
I'm
not
not gonna
gonna
do
ask
it.
him.
I'm not gonna do it. Um, cool. What else, guys? Good chat today. Zoe, glad you're here. Good to see you.
it made me think when you were talking before just about brain survival, and it made me think about the concept of laziness, like for people who are just, and how much that is trained as well, but how much it's hard to take that first step out of it, and also how that's a safety issue, a comfort issue.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah,
It's all those things.
yeah.
It's the said principle, and it's a progressive thing, either direction. That's why burnout is so insidious and terrible, is because when you burn out, you just you lower the bar on everything, and your threshold just like drops. And so then your brain is like, every time you try to get back into something, it's like ding 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 ding. Just major threat at a very low threshold. So you have to take it really slow when you're working your way back out. But even without burnout, just over time, people that are always seeking safety, they get less and less I don't know what the right word is, but they become more and more reactive to any threatening or anything hard. And to use a training example again, it's like if you never push yourself in the gym, then you not only will you not see results, but you'll continue to just keep moving the bar backwards
Hmm.
and never pushing outside of your comfort zone just leads to, you know, a body, if we want to use a body example, like a bodybuilder, a really high level athlete, a power lifter, constantly pushing themselves outside their comfort zone, They're shaping a new body. It becomes like a statue, like the statue of David, right? That's chipping away. It's uncomfortable. The other side of that, somebody that just never goes outside the comfort zone, and then that comfort zone just slowly and slowly shrinks. They just become like this blob. And
Mhm.
yeah, you see it. Like if you go to gyms, you see it's pretty easy to see what types of people are pushing outside their comfort zone day by day, and what types of people just stay comfort because they never change. They never change. They can go out there and work out every day. You might see them sweating, but their bodies never change. And in fact, they make it worse, rounder and softer. So laziness is totally trained and can be untrained. But it's like anything, you have to start where you are and use the 4% rule. 4%. Or if you want to be even, most people out there say 1%. 1% better every day. If you can do that in a year, you're a totally different person. But I say go for 4%. That's the sweet
Right.
spot. That's the sweet spot of flow. Ah,
All right, so I'm just gonna say, if you see that phenomenon about I was talking about the insula and the lower back and rib thrust, just let me know. I'll keep it as a. I saw it a lot when I lived in the Bay Area.
interesting.
Yeah.
I will. I think I actually personally have a little bit of that, which is interesting.
All right.
I do tight lower hips, super hypermobile neck.
Yeah, it is curious. I'll be on the lookout for connections,
Okay.
and I'll think.
Yeah, I love that I can talk about this in this group, and we can think about it and understand it at a deeper level versus people looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's in there. So we'll let the unconscious go to work, see what connections it can come up with.
Awesome.
All right, guys, I gotta get. Thanks for being
Thank you. Good to see you both. Bye, though.
here. See you soon. Bye, Zell.